and there was a push to integrate black people into white schools. And it looked like also that some aspect of the government was responsible for pushing that. Do you think that blacks should have stayed segregated in the educational system and maybe form their own private school, private institution, and stay separate? Or you think they should have integrated within the public school system of white America?
I think there's two parts to that question, right? So number one, I think a lot of people have a misconception of what Brown versus Board of Education was all about. Brown versus Board of Education was not necessarily about integrating schools or having, black students and white students in the same schools, as much as it was about having equality of resources, right? So those schools, those black schools, prior to integration, did not have deficits in their performance. Okay, so it wasn't like they were saying, "Oh man, these black teachers can't teach our black kids the way that we want. We want to take them over here to the white teachers." That was not the problem. The problem was the fact that you did not have the resources that they needed in order to do the job at the level that they deserve. When we're talking about books, we're talking about buildings, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about like tangible, you know what I'm saying? So like public goods.
Wouldn't it be better to take those goods and bring the resources back into the black community and black schools?
And so let me get to the second part, right? So the second part is that our schools are in fact more segregated today than they ever were.
Yes.
Okay. So if the idea is, oh well, then integration or whatever is ruining our education and whatnot, man, I don't know how many schools you've had the opportunity to go into, but you go in certain communities and diversity is a rarity.
Yeah.
More than it is the norm. Okay. So at my school, there's a small population of white students in our school, right? My school is mostly Latino and black, right? I don't say African American, black, because not all the kids at my school are African American, right? Who are same complexion as you or I, or some variance in between. Right. So I think we miss the fact that like the integration that we saw is not necessarily there. Now, if we did really want to integrate schools, there's one thing we can do. And that would be separating the property tax assessment and funding of schools. Your property taxes away from the funding of schools. If we separated how schools are funded, then you would not have as much of a disparity, and then there would be more choice. Until we get serious about doing that, until we get serious about starting to talk different about how we handle local taxes and local school funding, then we're not ever really being serious about realizing true not only diversity, but inclusion. Because again, this is another part to it, right? We confuse diversity for inclusion. Like what we actually want is inclusion. You can have schools where you have black students and white students, but guess where they're going to eat? At their own tables. Right. Guess where they're going to sit? In their own corners of the classroom.
I think it's a natural concept. People...
I don't...
You don't think people naturally just... But not just on race.
I think what it is though is that when we are more inclusive of each other's cultures, we blend more. Okay? Mm-hmm. So I have certain groups of kids in my classroom where there's a Latino kid, a black kid, a mixed kid, a white kid, or whatever, and they're always together. Well, why? Because they watch anime and manga, and they enjoy that culture.
But
you know what I'm saying?
But check this out. I didn't mean to cut you off, though.
No, you good.
But just check this out. Don't you think that it kind of hinders and it's kind of a hindrance you guys' teaching ability by funding not being there, as far as not just per se for funding of you guys getting paid for your work, but as far as funding, as far as having limited things that you guys that would be more beneficial to you helping the kids more besides just yourself.
Yeah. No, I mean scarcity is experienced in anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. Like Apple. Their phones wouldn't cost $1,000 if they didn't have to experience scarcity. Like if resources weren't limited and caused them to charge what they charge for stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So even in education, like no matter how much money you have, there's only a finite amount of what you can do with it, right?
Right.
Could I be doing more? Could I have more opportunities to have real life experiences and trips and things like that with kids if we had more money? Absolutely, right? But does that stop what I'm able to offer a student within my classroom? Never.
Do you think that? Let me take this call. I got the question for you. Caller, please state your name, where you calling from.